It's a symbol of free Russia. So I think the history of this flag, I think it's quite encouraging because it shows connection between present, past, and hopefully the future. Because it was a spontaneous act of many Russian activists who protested against the war after beginning of full-fledged invasion last year. And one of the acts that you could find on the internet is just the hand that was washing the lower stripe on the Russian flag, on tricolor. The idea was no more blood on our flag. As it was done spontaneously by many activists from Riga to San Francisco, we adopted it. So why should you oppose this idea that had such strong moral foundation? What we discovered later that these colors, blue and white, were colors of Novgorod Republic, the last free republic in Russia, crushed by Moscow expansion back at the end of the 15th century. So somehow, this connection between past and present offers us hope for the future, and we believe that free Russia will adopt this flag as a state one. While Russian imperial tradition caused so much suffering, both inside and outside of Russia, we still think that there were elements in Russian history that might offer us an opportunity to depart from this imperial algorithm of governance into a nation state. As I already mentioned, we had very old, forgotten traditions of free republics in the northwest, but there were traditions that were connected to Kiev's Rus, the Russian states that's now, by the way, represented more by Ukrainians fighting against what they believe is a golden horde. So it's not so much about just what you can take; it's basically what you should reject. So this is what you look at the Putin's ideology, the Z-ideology. Is this? It includes all the worst traits of Russian history, like the golden horde cruelty, the Byzantium messianic idea that states as the Moscow is the Rome and there will be no fourth one. Also the all-powerful tsars, that were above the law, like Ivan the Terrible, or the Soviet mythology, the KGB mythology, and also the criminal mentality that's existed in the Soviet Union and somehow just made its way into Putin's Russia, because Putin also came from this underground world. So it's one of the worst combinations. If you look at the chemistry of all the elements I mentioned, so they created the society that has no immune strengths to reject the virus, the Z-ideology as they called it at this conference. But I think that there's enough drive to Europe, I think historically, that may, I emphasize this word, may help us to overcome these challenges. We're not here, just to say that Ukraine wins, Ukrainian flag raises in Sevastopol, Putin collapses, regime goes, everything becomes fine. No, absolutely not. But unfortunately, that's the only way to move forward. There's no guarantee this future will be a bright one, but the ideas that we have been promoting, myself, Michael Khodorkovsky and others, about shifting Russia from this imperial state into a nation state and rejecting the worst parts of Russian imperial history or Soviet history, condemning these crimes, including the one that is being remembered here in Latvia today, the crime of Stalinism, of deporting Latvian citizens back in 1949. So that may offer us a chance to build a state that might become part of the free world. In this process, we may lose parts of Russia, so like current Russia, like Tatarstan, Bashkortostan. I'm not saying it will happen or it will not happen. It's not for me to decide. What is very important for us to have an open mind. So just to be free to actually to talk to various parts of Russia, debating whether they would like to stay as one state or not, because the future is a parliamentary republic that will be more like a loose confederation. Again, I'm not sure it's achievable, but I hope that majority of Russian public, after the war is being lost and Ukrainian territorial integrity restored and imperial idea is crushed psychologically, they'll recognize that the choice is very simple. Either we try to go back to Europe, paying reparations, confessing our crimes and rejecting the worst parts of history, or Russia will become part of Chinese, kind of the Chinese province. There's nothing in between. So okay, the possible collapse of Russia with many parts of this collapsed state becoming still China and others trying to find, that's the accommodation with Europe. Still the scenario of somehow keeping the core Russian regions together based on these confederative connections, it's the almost ideal scenario by current standards. Bring us back to 1991. I think that's what happened in 1991. If we look at the parallels with Germany of the 20th century, that was 1918 in Germany. The war was lost, but since there was no, back in 1918, occupation and no visible sign of military defeat, so in the minds of many Germans, it was like a betrayal. So same in 1991, the Cold War was lost, but unfortunately there was no clear condemnation of communism. So there was no the communist crimes have not been revealed. Lenin still stayed, this is mummy still stayed in mausoleum. So the many elements, the mythological elements of the criminal regime, they were preserved. And it's still somehow that's created conditions for KGB return. And now we have to go through 1945. Now it's very important to actually basically to crush this ideology and to send an unequivocal message to minds of millions of Russians. Empire is over. And that's the only way to do it is a visible military defeat, something they understand. That's why I say the beginning of liberation of Russia is the Ukrainian flag raised in Sevastopol. That's what they will see. They will recognize it's over. And Russian history tells us that the moment war is lost, people immediately think about change. So even the Russo-Japanese War back in 1905 that took place thousand kilometers away from Moscow and St. Petersburg led to the revolt, which couldn't overthrow the Tsar's government, but after concessions were made, Russia became a constitutional monarchy, and also it's happened God knows where, and the legitimacy of Tsar's government was, in my view, far more formidable than Putin's regime. I don't think that Putin's personally and his vertical of power can survive the liberation of Crimea by Ukrainians, because it's a myth. And it's a staple of Putin's regime, as they say in Russia, skrepa. That's the and dictatorships, individual dictatorships, personalized dictatorships. They need mythology that shows that the dear leader Führer is just it's above any criticism. So he's just he knows everything. He is unbeatable. He is invincible. So the Ukrainians liberating Crimea will send a message to Russian public that the worst is just lost, and I think it will lead to chain of events that will create opportunity for a positive change in Russia. Still opportunity, but that will depend on the decisiveness of the free world to keep pressure on Russia, keeping sanctions in place before all war criminals are not brought to justice. Look, many Russians will have to make a very simple, pragmatic choice. Again, do you want to go back to Europe? Don't forget, Russia since 1991 built very strong ties with the rest of the world. The Russian economy depends on spare parts and on financial assistance, and that's why Putin's regime is desperately trying now just to replace it, and with very limited success. For many Russians, decent living conditions, will be a strong argument to look for the government that will guarantee the restoration of relations with the free world. While you can look at myself or Michael Khodorkovsky and others say, oh, you were out of Russia for 10 years. But what do you know about Russia? Why do they look at you as a saviors? But we have now, God knows how many, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions already, a couple of millions of Russians who escaped. And that's potentially, the new Russian elite. Those people, who are successful in Russia, business people, IT specialists. And if we could start, if we could organize them as the citizens of free Russia outside of Putin's Russia, as we half jokingly say, it's our South Korea versus Putin's North Korea. We may have an army of experts, army of specialists, army of future bureaucrats who could rebuild Russia from the scratch, instead of these thousands of corrupt Putin's, tens of thousands of corrupt of Putin officials. Look, I have to say that the war had quote unquote positive effect on unifying many wings of the opposition, because when you face such a tragedy, and we understand that you're on the wrong side of your country's on the wrong side of history, you have to find common ground to work together. And while many of our colleagues in opposition, they had reservations about Crimea, for instance, while we were very decisive from day one, Crimea, Ukraine, and we never want to compromise on these, on other important issues regarding the illegal nature of Putin regime and its aggressive policies. Today, it's widely accepted. So it's no longer a challenge to say war is criminal, regime illegitimate, Crimea, Ukraine. So though some of the members of the opposition, they prefer, instead of saying Crimea is Ukraine, we support Ukrainian state in the borders of 1991. Somehow this is a very interesting psychological block. It's the same, but the basic recognition of Ukraine as an independent state within its 1991 borders, that it's there. Russia Parliamentary Republic, that was also a big debate, for instance, between us and some of the people supporting Alexei Navalny. It's gone. Even Navalny now accepted parliamentary republic. So it seems that the key elements of disagreements, they are no longer there. So it's not that we celebrate that we were right, they were wrong. What's important is that we don't have the same divisive issues anymore. And while there's still differences, it's much easier to cooperate. And that's why you already having coalitions like Russian Action Committee. That's I formed with Michael Khodorkovsky, and we have many people working with Alexei Navalny there, so like Sergei Guriev, for instance, or Evgeny Chichvarkin. So, and it seems that there's while we achieved certain progress in getting together, Europe is also looking for alternatives. Parliamentary Assembly of Europe expelled Russia after this full-fledged invasion, and they also made a decision to start contacts with Russian civil society and opposition. And we had a meeting just less than a week ago in Paris. That was the first of the hopefully of the series of these meetings, where they the leadership of Parliamentary Assembly, the president and the representatives of the 5 major groups, political groups, they sat with us and discussed how we can start building official relations. It also shows the change in the minds of people on that side of the opposition, because he had to resign instantly when it became public. So it's whether he had any personal interest of signing this letter or what, I don't know. But the fact is that this is those who had more lenient view towards sanctions against oligarchs. they also had to accept public opinion. So you could see that the political mood is hardening. And while we were always very consistent, sanctions, and Alpha Group or all other groups, they for us all the same. So and there were attempts to separate them and just to find, for some reasons, to find way out for certain oligarchs. I think it's no longer an option. And again, I think it was a very important decision by the Navalny's group to remove Volkov and appoint another person. And basically, Alexei's letter from jail condemned. Okay, condemned is probably a strong word, but harshly criticized Volkov for doing that, though it was just short of condemnation. The biggest concern about Oscar ceremony for me was that the second time in a row they refused to give floor to President Zelensky, and I wrote about it on my Twitter. So I think that was a very bad decision. I think it was wrong because they had to honor, especially because it was second request, honor Ukrainians in this fight. I had many disagreements with Alexei Navalny, political disagreements. We still have some disagreements. So but he's in jail. I mean, we should separate, the political views and personal courage. So while I had and I still have, my differences with him, but I'm ready to pay full tribute for personal courage and sufferings of him, because it's not just him, but it's many others. We're talking about some say hundreds, some say thousands of political prisoners. And I wish we remember people like Volodya Karamurza and others who are just now in Putin's jail for protesting the war and for fighting against fascist dictatorship in Russia. So I think it's about having the balance. So I wish, Yulia Navalny said something about war in Ukraine. So that's this. But again, I always separate, the political elements with personal courage. As I said, the way they handled the ceremony was not appropriate, as I see it. As for the good Russians, look, this war will not end tomorrow. And to win the war and also to guarantee that Russia will have a chance to become a normal civilized state, you need quote-unquote good Russians, people like us, because I'm not pretending, that we have to go around saying good Russians, but you still see the difference between those who are conducting the war and those who are fighting. And we have been helping Ukraine from day one. Actually, for us, day one began in 2014. And for us, Ukrainian victory is the first step to liberate Russia. So that's why we say victory for Ukraine, freedom for Russia. So it's important for the free world to actually to work with people like us. And I think the understanding is there now that we just have to cooperate, because that's how we can Putin regime. Because more Russians will see an opportunity to leave Putin's Russia and to join us, weaker the regime. So you have the brains, the financial resources, also the potentially the mobilized soldiers. The numbers being reduced, which will help Ukrainians to win the war. So again, I think we are gradually coming to the point where we're ready to work together. But again, going back to the Oscar ceremony, I think it was inappropriate, and on my Twitter, I immediately responded to that. I understand it, but unlike many politicians here, I never shook hands with Mr. Putin. So I've been talking about Putin's threat since 2001. That my first article in the Wall Street Journal. So I have more than 20 years of fighting Putin's regime. While I fully recognize the responsibilities of all of us, even those who fought Putin, for the crimes committed by the regime, same way as the great Germans like Thomas Mann or Marlene Dietrich felt about Nazi Germany. But look, you can totally deny that's our existence. Does it help to win the war? Because we are on the same boat. We are fighting this regime, which is a threat to you, to Lithuanians, to Estonians, to Poles. And sooner we beat Putin, sooner we remove him from historical stage into the dustbin of history, better for all of us. So that's why I think pretending that we're not allies and we are not doing the same job. And again, some of us doing this job much longer than many of those who are now pretending that they are just, you know, they always wore the white gloves. So I think it's short-sighted. But again, I always, you know, recognized in public that there's a collective responsibility, which is different from personal guilt. So I don't feel guilty, but I understand that as a Russian citizen, I also carry certain responsibility for our inability to prevent Russia becoming this monster state as today. Oh yeah, I have to say that those things are not happening as fast as Ukrainians want, as fast as I want. It's happening. And I think that Europe is probably, you know, surprised by itself now, by solidarity, transatlantic solidarity, and also by the ability of European bureaucracy to move. Again, it's slower than Ukrainians want, and they're right. You have to move faster, but it's much faster than Putin expected, and maybe Europe expected to move. So the already 10 packages of sanctions, and also the solidarity of helping Ukraine and providing weapons. Again, more weapons sooner, but it's happening. So that's why I applaud the efforts of Europeans and Americans of helping Ukraine, though I think we should do more and faster. I've been working, again, from day one of this full-fledged invasion to raise funds for Ukraine. So the organization that I founded in America 7 years ago, Renewed Democracy Initiative, we raised over $10 million for Ukraine. So that's just to give an idea. That's we have been working very aggressively in helping Ukraine for various humanitarian causes, from supporting water filtering stations, sleeping bags, MREs, meals ready to eat. Also, this is boosting their cybersecurity systems. So, doing this massive PR campaign, even bulletproof vests for the first responders. So that's what I've been doing, and also importantly, lobbying politicians on both sides of the Atlantic to give Ukraine weapons and all ammunition they need to win war faster better, because Putin's only chance is a war of attrition. That the war goes for another year, and then maybe political changes somewhere in America or in Europe could break the coalition. So that's why I hope that this year will be a decisive one. I think all conditions now are just there for Ukraine to have a decisive breakthrough by this summer, and to create opportunities for us to initiate changes within Russia. We had to make this decision because today to travel from Russia to this conference, which is organized by undesirable organization like Forum for Russia, by foreign agents like myself, Ivan Tutrin, who are foreign agents. So by Putin's law. So that's that makes you exposed to a criminal investigation and then up to 5 years in prison. So just simply appearing at this conference. So we just had to basically say, stay there. We know you're there, but we don't want you just to take your chance, because we still need people, not in jail but free, for the day we return. And again, while I applaud the bravery of those who took their chances, like Volodya Karamurza, but I still wish we had him and Alexei Navalny here fighting with us, rather than just being in Putin's jail as hostages.